Chapel inside the Vatican. Others include Brother Anthony of Edmonton and Bishop Laval of Quebec. The only other saints associated with Canada were the early Jesuit martyrs who were born in France. But now a Vatican lawyer has been assigned to prove Brother Andre's miracle, to establish for all time Brother Andre's right to sainthood. St. Joseph's Oratory, a shrine of Quebec granite rising from the mountainside in Montreal like a Taj Mahal. The late Richard Daley, mayor of Chicago, used to make pilgrimages here. Like many, he would ascend the steps leading to the shrine on his knees, praying at each step for special favors. In Daley's case, perhaps to remain mayor of Chicago forever. The steps to sainthood are much tougher, steeper, and stonier. Brother Andre dedicated his shrine to St. Joseph. More and more, it's turning into a shrine to Brother Andre, with wax figures depicting him gazing out at the mountain, doorkeeping at the college, and dying in the actual hospital bed. But most intriguing is Le Cœur de Frère André, the heart behind a red seal and preserved in embalming fluid. 3 years ago, the relic was kidnapped and returned under mysterious and still unexplained circumstances. This summer, the Vatican declared that his heart was pure, that he had practiced the Christian virtues heroically. The Pope declared him venerable, step one on the road to sainthood. The next stage is beatification. The Church demands 2 miracles before Brother Andre can be called blessed. Inside the chapel, stretchers and wheelchairs crowd the aisles. The blind, the crippled, and the lame come by the thousands every year, drawn by the stories of miraculous cures. The man spooning incense onto the burning charcoal is Joe Adino. Joe is a retired building contractor from Rochester, New York, and a believer. Joe believes that Brother Andre helped him make the greatest comeback since Lazarus. He believes in miracles, for good reason. For Joe, it wasn't just a question of a wheelchair or a stretcher. It was cancer, and a notation in his file saying he had 30 days to live. He not only lived, he flourished. He became a character straight out of the Bells of St. Mary's, a repentant businessman who helped build the orphanage, the school, the nunnery, and whatever else the bishop wanted built. Joe also thanks Brother Andre for helping to make him a millionaire. He told us that now he prays to Brother Andre to keep him alive long enough so together they can make Joe's children millionaires.
Visiting the United States is Brother Andre, better known as the Miracle Man of Montreal, on tour to raise money for a new shrine.
Brother Andre knew when to tip his hat for the newsreels and how to tap the consciences of millionaires, men in big black touring cars who calculated that some shrewdly placed charity in this world might help them make that difficult passage through the eye of a needle into the next world. Brother Andre took their money, promised to pray for them, then went home to build his shrine even bigger. Brother Andre born Alfred Bassett to a dirt-poor family in a dirt-poor village, a man who, because he had the health of a sick sparrow, just made it through the door of a religious order whose vows had to be read to him because he could barely read or write. And because he could barely read or write, he was given the simple duties of doorkeeper and barber at a boys' college run by the order. This little cleric took $200 in nickels he saved from cutting the hair of 4,000 students at 5 cents a crack, multiplied it like loaves and fishes, combined it with the kind of faith that can move a mountain, and moved it upwards towards the sky. All this was done during the greatest depression the world has ever seen. And in 1937, at the age of 91, when the rictus of death finally overtook him, newspapers from La Presse to the New York Times gave him the page-1 coverage usually reserved for presidents, prime ministers, and pontiffs. Few of them could have inspired or even commanded the multitudes who, despite bitter January weather, came from around the world to stand in line. By the hundreds, they came in flying boat from Europe, Asia, and South America. By the thousands in cars, by the tens of thousands in special trains from New York and New England, from all the states, from all the provinces of Canada. Reporters counted the people who passed by his bier, who pressed his cassock and touched his shoes. They counted more than 1 million people. When Brother Andre started his first shrine, he besieged his superiors for a helping hand. The only man the order could spare had been blind since birth. Send him, Brother Andre said. It is said the next day the blind man saw. So, as Brother Andre lay in his coffin, many of the blind were guided to touch his eyes in their own search for sight. Hanging above his coffin like battle trophies were polio braces, stretchers, and the crutches left by the cured. On the night of August 14th, 1958, the death watch was mounted over Joe Adino. The cancer hatched 3 years before in his lymph glands had spread like an army of black ants to attack almost every organ of his body. His liver had swollen like a blowfish. The marrow in his bones no longer reproduced the red and white platelets necessary for life. In the cancer ward, it's called the terminal phase. Years before, looking for help, Joe had visited another shrine, the one in Saint-Anne-de-Beaupré near Quebec City. But nothing happened, and disappointed, he headed home through Montreal.
We went to St. Anne's, and on the way back from St. Anne's, we stopped at the Laurentian Hotel. And talking to the doorman, he told me of St. Joseph's and the great work of Brother Andre. So we immediately took a limousine and came right up here. And the first thing I did, I went up to the little chapel, and I was in the little room that Brother Andre stayed in. While I was in there, something came over me. I was never a very religious person because I wasn't brought up as such, but I am a Catholic. While I was in the room there, I felt as if something was telling me that I had found a friend that could answer some of my many prayers. When I became sick, I used to pray to Brother Andre. I used to say, Brother Andre, please tell the doctors what to do. I never asked for an instantaneous miracle of any kind because I didn't think of such things. But I did say, please, tell them what to do. And I think he did. Brother Andres, I felt, because never at any time was I afraid that I was going to die. You want to take another picture of me?
Joe, why not?
Yes.
His doctor, Philip Rubin, now assistant director of the University of Rochester Cancer Center.
Great.
He had reached the point from which no patient really returns, that it was really downhill and probably the end for him. My main hope in treating him was to palliate him. I wasn't really thinking in terms of an actual long-term cure. And in fact, when we try to reproduce some of the things that we did with him and other patients, it clearly didn't work.
This summer, Dr. Rubin traveled with his old friend and patient to Montreal and the Oratory. He walked alone in the silence of the Great Hall, looking for a clue as to what happened in Joe Adino's hospital room. Why a substance called radioactive gold, injected to make death easier for Joe, suddenly cured him, an occurrence that had never happened before or since. I'm a Jew, he said, so I don't accept the Catholic theology. I'm a doctor, so I don't accept miracles. I'm a research scientist, and I believe there's a logical explanation for most things.
You could, in the Catholic sense, call it a miracle. We would call it perhaps some other factors that were operating in addition to the ones that we had utilized.
It had to be a miracle because all the circumstances pointed it to that. When I found out that I was going to expire within 30 days, and I asked my doctor, how long did I have to live? He says, I don't know. Well, what are we going to do about it? So they decided to come up with that radioactive gold, which wasn't of anything of value to anybody else, but it worked on me.
Rome, St. Peter's Square. Brother Andre was the very simplest of souls, but now he is caught up in an ancient and rigorous process. Every word he ever wrote, every prayer he ever uttered, every action he ever performed, all are being dissected and examined. His life is being brought before the very highest court of the church. The defender of the faith, the man they call the devil's advocate, is the prosecutor. His job is to ask any embarrassing questions. But Brother Andre has his defender. He is known as the postulator. For 7 years, from his office in the Vatican, he has compiled 14 volumes of evidence in defense of Brother Andre's cause. Father Angelo Mitri.
I am somehow the defendant, because it is a real process and it has a certain characteristic of a criminal process. In a way, the candidate to canonization is considered not a saint until he is proclaimed a saint.
Bound volumes of evidence in the case of Alfred Bessette, Brother Andre, testimony taken under oath, cross-examining his life. A man's own words can be used as evidence against his sainthood, so Father Mitri is delighted that Brother Andre wrote so little.
Now, Brother Andre wrote very little. In fact, I think we